Please briefly summarize your industry education and professional background.
My name's Cathy Choi. I have more than 3 decades of energy and transportation experience. I've led numerous global strategies in order to help the company that I'm with or customers meet their net zero greenhouse gas goals by 2050. That includes a lot of work in new technology strategy and development. I've supported businesses and product strategies by launching more than 100 low emissions engines and their applications into production over my 30-year history. I earned my PhD in mechanical engineering. I specialized in combustion and emissions formation and alternative fuels research.
So what is your role at ClearFlame, and how is ClearFlame involved in the infrastructure industry?
Yes, thank you for asking. I am the Chief Sustainability Officer and the Vice President of Engineering at ClearFlame. I lead our engineering and product development activities while also growing relationships with partners that share our mission of meeting customer and industry sustainability objectives. So ClearFlame, from an infrastructure standpoint, we're involved by innovating and developing technologies that provide solutions. Those are solutions that build and use infrastructures. So this includes trucks, equipment that provide power generation, as well as other freight moving modes. We're also involved through strategic partnerships, ways to provide low carbon fuels through existing and cost-effective upgrades to the existing fueling infrastructure.
Please tell me about the Engineering Research Visioning Alliance, ERVA, and its report outlining engineering research priorities for future sustainable transportation networks. What was your role in creating the report?
Well, first of all, ERVA is Engineering Research Visioning Alliance, as you stated. It's a National Science Foundation, NSF, funded initiative. We identify future engineering research directions by enabling an array of voices to have an impact on national research priorities. What we really help facilitate is providing a means, a way to unify sort of that voice, that engineering community voice, as one voice, and ensure we include technical professionals from all walks of life across all demographics and experience levels, like early research associates to folks like myself who have been in industry for over 30 years, and that could include industry, academia, and the government supporting officials. The way I got involved is that I serve on ERVA's Standing Council. It's a 37-member council or group where we as a collective help identify the big themes that ERVA should explore. And for this particular event, I co-chaired the Sustainability Transportation Networks with Professor Erin Bell. She's with the University of New Hampshire. And as part of the task force, we helped shape the event, including discussion and direction of how we build these sustainable transportation networks. We chose this area of transportation because whether we're moving people or freight, goods and services, it's the largest user of energy in developed countries and the most rapidly growing energy consumer in developing nations. That will probably double between 2015 to 2050. And so this transportation activity is enormously impactful to the environment, to the people, to the communities we serve over the next 25 years.
So what are the goals of this report? What are some of its key conclusions?
The goal of the report, of our report, is to really identify research priorities, and these research priorities that can drive progress to developing sustainable transportation networks. We know that progress in this area will help drive positive impacts on social and economic conditions everywhere that we are present, particularly in the communities that we serve. We had outcomes, some major outcomes from the report, and it's a great report, but there are 3 key themes that came out of the event in these areas of fuel transportation or future transportation. Those 3 key themes are leveraging data-informed operations to improve our systems of transportation, advancing sustainable technologies, and that also incorporates versatile materials, as well as the overarching need to improve equity and accessibility through our transportation system, through devices, and designs of service.
So here's a broad question for you. What do you consider sustainable and equitable transportation? And how much would that differ from what we currently have?
Sustainable and equitable transportation The way I would define that is a system, a transportation system that doesn't displace or at least adequately provides access to everyone. And we do that by ensuring we design for equity. That means for every part of the system, whether it's the different modes of transportation, modes being rail, flight, on-road vehicles, to infrastructure, which includes, overall buildings of bridges and road systems, as well as digital systems that support that. All of this is what's really important for sustainable and equitable transportation. So one of the best ways to sort of exemplify this is through an example. And for an aging community, which is what the US is, there are about 76 million births between 1946 to 1964. And since 2019, about 10,000 people a day have crossed the age of 65. So the question that we pose to ourselves is, how do we provide sustainable and equitable transportation to this aging population, this aging demographic, who expect cost-effective, easy to understand, reliable, convenient, and secure mobility? So that's how I would encompass sustainable and equitable transportation, and how we have to move forward and improve upon the ways we do now to what we need in the future.
Can you describe a little bit more just on how different our current system is from that kind of sustainable and equitable position?
Now we're really interconnected. So, for example, we see transportation, particularly in the United States, as a car. And so are there ways to overcome in different demographics that don't have as much accessibility to individual vehicles? And so how do we design a system for a community that's scalable across the nation, yet customizable to that community? So some differences is it's really a collaborative approach. We've been very collaborative in the past. We just need to take it to the next level of collaboration of how we design transportation modes, how those are connected to the infrastructure, and then how that will be, how we get all the data so we can optimize that system for local communities, as well as driving the scale across larger communities, and ensuring that we don't isolate or create silos within the communities either. So it's a huge system problem. And that was one of the challenges when we had this visioning event is you can't have 80 plus folks who were the participants in our visioning event, 80 plus folks in one room. We segregated them out into 4 different areas, but they were so interconnected that our visioning event created core ideas and transportation modes and infrastructure and data and equity and inclusion, as well as what are the common threads, the common foundational threads across all 4 of those subject areas.
Okay, now for a specific question. Can you describe a surprising result from the report, good, bad, or maybe both?
I wouldn't say it was as surprising. I would say we were very fortunate. We were very, particularly myself, when interacting with this cadre of 80 plus experts in sustainable transportation, I really appreciated how they all highlighted the importance of urban planning. A lot of times we get really deep into the technology. It's really, like I said, very interconnected, making sure we get voice of the customer. Urban planning is a large part of that. And the collaboration between the planners and engineers to meet these local community needs, how that was highlighted over and over again. In other words, for me, it was really encouraging the emphasis on human-centered design.
So how can our audience of civil and structural engineers better apply these principles that you're talking about in their own designs? Basically, what advice would you give them?
The report itself is a great document, as it highlights, distinct areas, 4 distinct areas, like I was mentioning earlier, of focus for sustainability and transportation. That was infrastructure, modes of transportation, data, and the people in the community. All these areas are interconnected, like I stated earlier. However, how our existing and up and coming civil and structural engineers, what do they need to take into account and make sure that they don't, put at the back burner how important the voice of business, voice of the customer, voice of the regulator, now and in the future, how important that is. So I'll put this in sort of an example as well, like a bridge. So when we select the design and the material used for the construction of a bridge, engineers should consider, the different vehicles that will use it now and in the future, different mixed modes of transportation. That's what I was referring to, whether it's a personal car, bus, rail, flight, today in order to make it sustainable in the future, thinking about that, how these different modes of transportation, how are they going to be powered? How are they going to be fueled? Not everything is going to be as it is today with gasoline stations or diesel stations. There's going to be more infrastructure around the electrical infrastructure as well as alternative fuels from a sustainability standpoint, and how all of this interacts with the community. And this is, just an example for a bridge that might be transporting maybe a bridge for rail. It could be for walking. It could be for different modes of transportation. I would also advise learning about enablers to the system, enablers like sensors and models that provide really valuable information for our engineering researchers and designers. And as engineers, we are measured by cost and quality of our solutions. So enablers like sensors, if we pick that, particularly like for bridge technology, that sensor needs to be durable. It needs to be able to provide real-time information while being that cost-effective approach that's extremely important to the design of your system and the solutions. So you can, like I stated earlier, customize for individual needs while also being able to scale your engineering solutions across a larger entity. I'd like to reiterate some key points because what the approach that we had in this visioning event was very holistic. We wanted to make sure it was inclusive of a variety of demographics, regardless of, experience level or from your background, whether it came from academia, industry, or government. And so as sort of what was our founding thought process is how do we all work together to take on the challenge that transportation is the largest user of energy in developed countries, like I stated earlier. And it really is one of the largest growing areas, as actually the rapidly growing area of energy consumption across the world. So this is a huge challenge for all of us. It's a very exciting challenge, but it's a huge challenge. And because of that, and which really led to why we needed this visioning event, is we need really good transformational ideas, how engineering can lead in the solutions that's informed by these type of visioning events. And again, they're informed by very diverse groups. I'd like to also reiterate the 3 key themes, how important data is in terms of these research principles and priorities that we brought forward, because that data is leveraged for our operations, particularly in these transportation systems. How we advance sustainable technologies that incorporate materials research, fuels research, new ways of thinking in terms of service providers and how much data we need in terms of service like mobility as a service. And also, how do we improve equity and accessibility? Because that's really who we serve. And the demographics are huge, they're all important. And how do we do that in a very equitable and a highly accessible way through our solutions that meet the cost expectations and overall use expectations of our customers. And lastly, what this report really aims to do, with the culmination of the visioning event, is to inspire our researchers today and in the future, and those potential funding outfits, whether through public, private, or nonprofit, so they support and pursue these research priorities that we brought forward for engineering. And then lastly, by nature, transportation is interconnected. We sometimes, a lot of times forget that. We get in our car and we are so minded to go from point A to point B, but we are very interconnected. So to avoid community silos, we need to be able to connect the communities. We'll be able to build on these collaborative ecosystems that work for each individual community and then the larger communities as a whole.